Let's talk about the first ever Halifax Fleet Week. Hi, I'm Peter Ziobrowski with Halifax Shipping News, and this past weekend saw the first ever Halifax Fleet Week. Fleet Weeks are popular events in cities such as New York City, San Francisco, and usually feature a selection of international warship, public tours, and events for the sailors. Halifax hosted its first ever Fleet Week this year, and while I hope it continues, I think this one was kind of a disappointment. So the first thing I have to say about Fleet Week is the logo on their website. There's a battleship. How does that make any sense for the Royal Canadian Navy Halifax Fleet Week? There's not going to be a battleship here. We don't have battleships. It's like someone found a clip art Fleet Week logo. It's tacky and it's stupid. Especially since the Royal Canadian Navy actually came up with a really cool crest that was given out to all the sailors participating in the event. That image has a frigate, but then the mast has been replaced by the clock tower, which is like iconically Halifax. That's really well done. Why wasn't that the logo? Why aren't you hyping that? Also, why couldn't I buy that patch on the waterfront? Fleet Week this year was set up to be a precursor to the Cutlass Fury exercise. That exercise is primarily focused amongst NATO allies and anti-submarine warfare. It usually brings a host of foreign warships, American, British, French, Spanish, Scandinavian countries, into Halifax, usually a few days before the exercise. And since the first running of the exercise, the Navy's made it a point of doing a sail past as all the ships head out to sea, which has usually been a pretty good parade. This year, the exercise seems to be really small compared to previous years. NATO is currently running exercise in the North Sea, which seems to have taken commitments from all the countries that normally send ships for Cutlass Fury. Fleet Week started Thursday with events for sailors. Certainly, I think the sailors are going to get a good time in Halifax as a result of Fleet Week. This video is going to focus more on the missed opportunities for public outreach. So ship tours ran Friday and Saturday. I'm recording this on Saturday. I took Friday off and hit up all the ship tours because I thought Friday would be a less busy day since most people are off working. And generally, I think that was the case. So at the dockyard, USS Porter was open for tours, as well as HMS Portland, and the very first public tour of the Arctic offshore patrol vessel in Canada, HMCS Margaret Brooke, was open for tours. I have a video of the tour of Margaret Brooke. I'm going to link to it up here. When you arrive at the dockyard, go through security where they check your ID, and then you got shuffled into a line. What wasn't apparent at the time was that line was for US security to go tour USS Porter. If you wanted to go see the British warship or HMCS Margaret Brooke, you didn't actually need to stand in that line. You could just go to the front, hang a left, go about your way over to the other pier and tour those ships, which I did. HMCS Margaret Brooke, I'm not sure why they left this ship in the dockyard. This would have been a good one to put on the waterfront to really show it off. Having not seen one of these new build ships, because again, they haven't been open to the public in Canada before yesterday, they're impressive. They're not very warship-like. They're very clean and modern, and I think the sailors are going to be very happy sailing on them. I should also add that the tour of HMCS Margaret Brooke was super well organized. The ship's crew was there to lead you around, answer any questions that you had, and the path of the tour was very clear. This is the standard that I have expected. The same can be said with HMS Portland. Sadly, that ship was only open to the public on Friday and not Saturday. But they had an excellent tour. You could go into their helicopter, and for a first, the ship's crew actually allowed people into the operations room down below. You, of course, had to leave your phone, any cameras and electronics behind before you entered. They just slid them down the hallway, and when you came up the stairwell on the other side, you could collect them again. But it was interesting to see that space, and the crew in there were more than happy to use that space to fight the ship. So good job on HMS Portland. That was a treat, and I wish I could show it to you guys, but alas, no cameras. I also have to comment on British labeling. It's all in a sort of handwritten styled font, and it was just a delight to see the brightly colored markings warning about vents and drains. So let's talk about the Americans. Only one of the 3 ships was open to the public, the other 2 having arrived that morning. There was no plan for them to be open to the public on Saturday. In terms of tours of US ships, it was kind of lackluster. It was basically all on the outer decks and then up to the bridge. On previous American ship tours, had crew members talking about damage control. They've shown you more of the inside of the ship. The wait for the tour ranged from 40 minutes to an hour based on the experiences of some people that I talked to. Further down the waterfront, HMCS Moncton was open at Sackville Landing, tied up next to HMCS Sackville. I have a video of that tour, which I'll link to up here. That ship, pretty typical of the tours that you get of the Maritime Coastal Defense Vessel. In this case, the quarterdeck wasn't open to the public, which it usually is. Also, the gangway was super sketchy. They had to put some 2x4s across it so that people could gain a little more traction to get up and down it. Certainly, if you had mobility problems, you weren't making it up the gangplank. But otherwise, the ship tour was pretty typical, well organized and run. The tour of HMCS Fredericton was a bit of a disappointment. It feels like they parked the ship there and weren't really prepared. The ship itself was held off the dock by a couple of barges, which housed the gangplanks. Again, this is a pretty typical situation. Normally when you tour a Halifax class frigate, you enter onto the flight deck and then proceed sort of through an organized loop around the ship, so there's not really a whole lot of conflicting pedestrian traffic, except when you pass through the breezeway to go up to the bow area of the ship where the main gun is. In this case, you entered up the ship's main accommodation steps. Despite there being more suitable gangplanks available, they did not seem to be in use. The ship was really only open midships forward, so you could go on the bow, kind of wander around. This was kind of a disappointment. Halifax class frigates are regularly on public display in Halifax. Given the prominent location, it would have been nice if this was a little bit more organized. I also question the choice of putting the frigate there. With the AOPS being a HMCS Margaret Brooke being a brand new ship, I would think that the Navy would want to be showing off its newest and best, ships, as opposed to something from the early to mid 90s. If they're trying to attract people into a career in the Navy, show them the new stuff, not so much the old stuff. Putting it on the waterfront be the more publicly visible space. It would get more traffic through and probably further the Navy's goals better than frigate would, because certainly in that location there was a lot of foot traffic through it. There was a cruise ship in town, lots of people were going through it, and I think there was a missed opportunity there. With respect to Fleet Week, I should probably also mention that a week is really only 4 days. Events started Thursday, conclude Sunday with a sail past, which hopefully I will make a video of, depending on if I can get out to it or not. As a first attempt, I think the event was probably pretty good. I think next year, if they do this again, and I hope they do it again, they take some of this criticism into account, try and make it a bigger, better event. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, previous Cutlass Fury exercises have had more international participation than this one seems to. And, probably the best example of an event like this that we've seen in the past was the Royal Canadian Navy's 100th anniversary in 2010, which hosted an international fleet review, which saw 20-something international ships put into Halifax, and they were tied up and down the waterfront and open for public tours. And again, you still had issues with security getting onto the U.S. ships, but they were, open for more than just a couple of days. And there were events for sailors, and I thought that was a much better public presentation than the Navy and our NATO allies would be a better model to reproduce. Again, I think the events for the sailors in town for these exercises are excellent. Certainly there were a lot of them out and about on the waterfront yesterday, and I think they all seem to be having a good time and enjoying Halifax, which is good. So we've certainly made a good impression amongst the crews. One of the big benefits of an event like this for the Royal Canadian Navy is it makes the Navy very public and allows for interactions with the public that may not happen. Certainly, someone needs to walk into a recruiting center looking to join the Navy. They have to have some prior thought to that. And this gives the Navy a chance to address the public and potentially recruit people who had never considered a job in the Navy. And, I think their organization or lack thereof probably ended up hurting some of their goals. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to be notified of future videos. There's going to be more on our 4 days of Fleet Week coming, so hit that bell, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.